Yemi, many thanks for doing this with us. Let's just get started, shall we? Putin has agreed to halt strikes in Ukraine's energy infrastructure for 30 days after discussion with Trump. What do you think this temporary ceasefire signals about the potential for a longer-term resolution? Is a longer-term resolution in sight?
Thank you for having me. I think one thing we need to get from this context is what the regime in Russia stands for. And historically, we understand that one thing the regime in Russia does, or one thing they consider before making any decision, has to do with self-preservation. So every decision the Kremlin or Putin has made in the past or is making has to do for himself and for the regime. So the idea of the ceasefire now is to try to put like a pause on the conflict in order to maybe rearm or so, or to please Mr. Trump. Because the idea all the way is to gain territory. The idea is to expand, is to make a great state. So the whole idea of the ceasefire is to further the discussion as to carving out Ukraine or what is going to be gaining from the whole conflict. So we don't know for sure what the detail is going to be, since the Trump administration itself is quite unpredictable now. What we do know from what has been coming out in the last few hours, there's been a ceasefire, and the ceasefire is going to include stopping eating all the key infrastructures in Ukraine, pending the time. There will be more discussions. And we do know part of the ceasefire is going to be has to do with swapping of prisoners as well. So the details are still sketchy for now. But I think what we need to understand is the fact that the ceasefire doesn't mean a stop to the whole thing. It's a pause, just to let us know what's going to be coming on in due course. So for now, I think we can take it with a pinch of salt and see what the future holds.
And Trump mentioned talking about Ukraine's land, power plants, and assets. What could this mean for Ukraine's independency and its place in the world?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because Mr. Trump, President Trump, rather used a very unique phrase or word where you mentioned about dividing the assets. So again, because the Trump administration has been unpredictable, so what they say one thing, the next minute they say another thing. So dividing the assets could be, most of the key assets Ukraine has is located around the eastern region of Ukraine, which Russia controls. The largest nuclear power plant in Europe is in Ukraine. So we don't know if that asset is going to be part of the discussion. There's a dam around the Dnipro River as well, which is an important asset in Ukraine. We don't know if that's going to be part of the discussion. Essentially, what we're sensing is the carving out of Ukraine, where Russia is going to be taking some part of it. And what Ukraine is going to be holding on, we don't know as of yet. What we do know for now is Russia controls the Crimea, which they've annexed, and some eastern region of Ukraine. So again, the details are still sketchy. We don't know the details of the conversation between the Trump administration and the Kremlin, what they've been talking about regarding the assets. And this discussion obviously is being done over the heads of Europe, over the heads of Ukraine. This is a conversation within President Putin and President Trump. So we don't know all the details of the assets division as of yet. We can only hope more things to come out in due course. But as it stands now, it doesn't look like it's going to favor Ukraine, to be honest with you, as it stands now, because we all know from the decision that's been taken from the Trump administration, from all the signals they've been sending for the past few weeks, seems to be signals that favors Russia more than Ukraine. But we can only hope in the next few weeks we have more information on that.
And with tensions rising around Ukraine, how do you think Trump's approach will change U.S. foreign policy, and what could it mean for Europe and NATO?
Foreign policy is changed completely. I think everyone across the spectrum has agreed to that. So this is not the normal U.S. foreign policy we see, where the U.S. stands by allies all the way. But this time around, under the Trump administration, things are different. So we're already seeing the changes in Europe, for example. In the UK, we're talking about spending more on our defense. Because the UK government is already talking about spending about 2.5, 2.6% of GDP over the next few years on the defense. Well, the same thing in Germany today. We saw the German parliament passed a law which is going to allow the new German government coming in to spend up to €1 trillion on infrastructures and the military. So the whole dynamic is changing in Europe. So Europe is beginning to realize that, hold on a minute, I think we need to take a step back and get more united. It's looking like the Europe can't really rely on the Trump administration like they used to do, which means Europe now is not thinking of spending more on their defense in order to mitigate things. Because it used to be a case of America is spending more on the security of Europe before. The Trump administration is now saying, hold on a minute, we don't want to be doing that any longer. So it's changed a lot of things in Europe when it comes to defense spending.
And what are the risks or benefits of the U.S. directly talking to Russia about Ukraine's future? And how might either other countries like the EU or China or NATO react to this? Just removing, Ukraine from the entire conversation entirely.
In fairness to the Trump administration, there's a plus there. And the only plus for now is they seem to be keen to stop the bloodshed. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants the bloodshed to stop, the fighting to stop, the killings to stop. The question is at what cost? Who's going to be gaining? Who's going to be losing? Are we going to be handing victory to Russia at the expense of Ukraine? And again, some people behind, I don't know, maybe behind closed doors are worried. But if the Trump administration end up carving half of the Ukraine to Russia, so what's going to happen to China? Is China going to be doing the same to Taiwan? So what if China decided to invade Taiwan as well? What is going to happen? So this is like a very big ramification that's going to go around. The outcome of the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, I think, is going to have a profound impact on what goes on in Europe as a continent and in Asia as a China, because we don't know what China is going to be doing in the next few years, if they're probably going to decide to invade Taiwan as well. Nobody knows, so we can only speculate for now, but time will tell.
And time will tell indeed. Yemi, many thanks for doing this with us. I appreciate you for coming on. Yemi, all the way from Scotland, foreign affairs analyst, giving us a bit of insights on the 30-day ceasefire from Russia following the call with President Donald Trump. Once again, thank you.